In this video, I'll be going over various techniques for creating domes. We'll start with our base geometries and creating that base form. Then we get into subdivisions, creating the structure, and then further development. And then I go over one last technique that is really useful. So I'll go over all of the steps here in detail. Thank you very much for being here. These videos are perfect for architects, students, engineers, or anyone that wants to learn how to use Rhino for drafting, 3D modeling, and sharing their designs. If you enjoy the content, make sure to give it a like and subscribe for future videos. Thank you very much for being here, and let's jump right in. We'll start here inside of Rhino, type in units, and let's go here under feet and inches. Those are the units that I'll be using, but you can use any units as long as you know how big you want your design to be. So as long as you know that, let's move on to the circle. We'll click on circle and start at the 0, enter. Because as soon as you create a circle, it's going to ask you where to place it. And when you go to 0, enter, it actually places it right at the origin point. And now here at the top, we have a few options. We have radius, orientation, circumference, area. We're going to change it from radius to diameter. This way we can create a 50-foot diameter. So I'll go 50 feet. And it will create that circle at that origin point. So now with this, we can move on to creating the segment that creates the dome shape. To do that, we need to create there's different ways we can do that. The strategy and technique I like to use is creating a surface that we can draw our section on, and then use that the center line as our revolution or a revolving axis. So we'll go here to a new layer. I'll create a polyline from the center. So I'll have my center snap on. Then I'll go to my quadrant and I'll hit enter. Next, I'll take this line segment and I'll extrude this up. So I'll say extrude curve, and we'll move this up by 20 feet. Then what we're going to do is go here to, let's say, layer 1. And I'm just creating it using different layers. This way we can keep things organized and we can hide things and show things depending on what portion of the design we're in. Now we'll go to layer 1, which is going to be in red, and we'll place our construction plane here so we can create that segment. At the moment, we have it here at the origin, X, Y, and so we want to change that, but we can't technically really see what's going on unless we go to shaded mode. Now you can see the surface here, of course. So now let's go here to C plane, and then we'll go here to S for surface. Then we'll select that surface and go here to the bottom left and then hit enter. And so we've moved the construction plane, which is the way that we draw in 3D space. We need a reference to draw on. So what we're going to do now is use this surface and this reference plane to create that segment. The cleanest way to create a dome is going to be using an arc. And there are different ways we can do an arc. We can do from start point, from center point. Either way, whichever way you want to use it, just make sure your construction plane is aligned with where you want to draw it. So we'll go here to start point, top, end of arc, going to be here. And now we can pick the slope. You know, we can go like toroidal field kind of thing, or we can go more like a pointed dome. But if we want it to be more of a smooth, almost perfect dome, then we can pick direction, and I can go this way. Holding down shift, I can snap to my ortho this way. Now when you click, we've created this curved section. Now what I'll do is I want to extract this edge. This way I can revolve around it. So let's go here to a command called DUPE, duplicate edge. We'll be able to pick this center. I'll hit enter. And now we can take this surface and I'm going to hide it. So layer 6, which is the surface, I'll change the name of that, and then I'll call this, base geometry. And this is going to be section. So with this, now that we've created that section, and obviously we can draw any other section, like we don't have to do an arc. We can use here under NURBS curve, there are different ways that we can create a curve. This one will just give us a smooth curve. So now what we'll do is type in revolve, and it's going to ask what are the curves that we want to revolve. So it's going to be this section, and I'll hit enter. Start of revolve axis, well, we'll go from down here to up here. And there's also going to be record history option, which means that if you click on this record history, then we would be able to change the line segment to update our design. For now, I won't keep that record history, but just keep that in mind. And now I'll hit enter, and then how much out of 360 do you want to create? So I'll just go to 360, which is the default, and you'll see that when we have these brackets, we have the default command that it's going to do. So when I hit enter, it'll do 360. And now we've created the base geometry for the dome. What we need to do now is bring the construction plane back to the ground, and that from there we can further subdivide this dome. So we'll go here to C plane, W for world, and then T for top. And at this point, we can go back to our wireframe or even ghosted mode. And this way we can see the things here. Now we can move on to creating our subdivisions, which is going to give our dome design a specific shape, a specific pattern. And so that's there are different techniques, but we'll be going over the one that I use that is really efficient for really creating any kind of design. At this point, now we can create the subdivision. So we'll go here to layer 2 and call this points 1. This way we can create the point subdivision that we're going to be creating here. So we'll go here to divide, and it's going to ask which curve do you want to divide. So we'll start with this curve, which is going to be the segment that we use to create our dome. I'll hit enter. It's going to ask by how much. We'll go here to 6, enter. So it basically took this curve and subdivided it into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 even segments. Now we need to basically take these and we need to rotate them around. So right click on this point, go to select objects, deselect the top, and now we're going to copy these, but we're going to rotate them around at the same time. So we'll go to polar, it's array, polar, which means relative to a center axis. So we'll go here to the center point, and now it's going to ask us by how many. So if we did 6 this way, which would be 6 this way, it's 6 times 4. So we'll go here to number of items, 24. 360, yes. And it gives us a preview of our subdivisions, or of those segments or those points rotated all the way around that many times. We can change that to 30 if we see that the density is not enough. But we do want to keep it fairly uniform down here where our subdivision is straightforward, and of course as it gets to the top, it's going to taper down to the inside. The reason why I didn't choose all of the points is because since this is the center point, if I were to revolve this around 24 times, there would be 24 redundant points here at the top. So now I can hit enter. And now it's basically subdivided it. Now we have the points here. And one thing I like to do just to double check that maybe I don't have any redundant or extra things, I like to type in select duplicate cell DUP. And that way you can select things that are redundant, like if you had points overlapping, you can do that, but it says that it actually didn't find any overlapping geometry, so that's good. Let's go over a few techniques that I can do just with this type of subdivision, but I also want to show you another technique that can create triangulation. So this is as much as we need to subdivide. Now from here, there are a few other techniques. One of the things I like to do is let's keep our geometry here fairly clean, so to keep our steps, we don't lose our work. So we'll select this, either do a copy, and we'll copy it from here to here, or what I like to do is use the gumball axis that you want to move it in, hold down Alt, and then pull and drag, and you'll see that plus sign, which means that you're creating a copy. Now that I've created this copy, I can select this, type in isolate, and this way we're just working on an iteration of the design. We can always go back to the original, copy it over, and do a different iteration. Now with this one, let me show you how simple it can be to subdivide this. We're going to first go to a new layer, so we'll go to layer 3. Now we can start connecting it. Now the most straightforward way we can connect this would be with squares, but that's not as structurally sound as using triangulation. So if we go here to black, we'll go to layer 3 is going to be black, and then we'll go here to layer 3, change it to line 1. And we'll start here with a polyline. Now this is the important thing. We need to turn off everything, including Smart Track, and only leave the endpoints. Why? Or not endpoints, only the points. Why? We want to be able to snap to those points and nothing else. And this way we can ensure that everything is super clean and watertight. That's one of the issues that comes up is when you have, let's say, endpoint, point, intersect, and perpendicular, or those kind of things, and then you have you're wanting to create something perfect, it will try to, and you have Smart Tracker on, sometimes you will be just off by a tiny bit, and that's enough to mess up the entire process. So just keep in mind that accuracy here is really important. So one way to do that is we'll go here to point, object snap, and we'll work our way around. Now I do like to start at one of the coordinates, right? Like if this is the X and Y, well, let's start here and work our way around. I'll start with this one, and we'll go up, down, and work our way around like this. Also, depending on the subdivisions, if you use an even number, you will be able to close it. If you use an odd number, let's say if I would use 25, then that does cause an issue here towards the end because it doesn't close it down perfect, if that makes any sense. So now with this one, we can continue on doing the rest. Now we don't have to do them all like this, but I do like to at least do the bottom one, and then we can move on to doing this. So we're skipping one, center. And if you have too many subdivisions, so here's the other thing, and I'll say about the subdivisions. If we go here at the end, we'll do C, enter, and it'll close. The other thing is if you have way too many subdivisions, it will get tricky to keep track of this. Sometimes it is good to just do one segment and then you can array it all the way around. I just sometimes like this method, like I mentioned earlier. It does kind of show, it has a bit of a different process, but I feel like it looks really good. So here we'll go from there to the midpoint and all the way around. And honestly, we don't even need to go to those midpoints. We could just go here straight. What do I mean by we can just do one segment? This is what I mean. We can just do these segments here. Now what happens is when we do that, then we will have, like with this one, we don't have any redundant lines. This will, because when we rotate it around, this one will overlap with that one. So I guess in terms of keeping things clean, sometimes it is good to do the work here, and let's work our way around the design here. You can skip to see kind of what it looks like at the end, but I do want to show this process here. C to close, and then we'll do this again. C to close. Here at the end, this is going to be the one that where we skip this one and we just do the end points. And the other thing I wanted to mention is we can actually here break the geometry a little bit. We can skip struts here because when we get to a tighter portion here, we don't need as many struts, so you can have a little bit more freedom. But down here, it's going to be what it's going to be. The other trick is going to be start here, midpoint, and then here, and then we'll skip one. What we don't want is redundant lines. So now with this, we can hide our points. Now we can go to endpoints and work our way around here. C, enter to close. Cool. So that goes over the technique for creating those segments. This bottom one is where we created it. Let's do this, please. So with triangulation, we're able to distribute the forces all the way down a lot more evenly. We're also able to create more rigidity with triangles, so that's going to make it a lot more sturdy. And this is a technique that you can use not just with domes, but with any other shape, as long as you're able to kind of subdivide it at one top point, at a bottom point. You should be able to triangulate using that method. Technically, this came from a rectangular grid. So yes, you can see from a rectangular grid, we are still also able to create some triangulation. Now I'll type in show and see that we have here our initial steps. Then I'll take all of this, hold down Alt, copy it over to the side. Now I'll do ZS, enter to zoom to the selection, and then I'll type in isolate. So we can now focus on this part of the design. So with these struts, we can further develop this design, and that's what we'll be doing next. Now that we have our geometry here, notice that when you select it, it's going to be a polyline. That was from how we created it. So what we want to do is just select this and type in explode, and it's going to subdivide it. It's going to explode it and turn them into individual segments. Now when you select it, you'll see here it says 192 curves were added to the selection, and that's how many struts you have. Let's say if you wanted to develop this, that's how many struts you would have, and then you can see, you can also do a cost estimation that way. So now we'll be moving into taking this into a 3D form. So I'll go here to layer 4, go from line 1, and we'll call this structure 1. I'll select all of these and type in pipe. Now it's going to ask for the radius. It says 1 foot. Well, we don't want 1 foot. We want the radius to be about 1 inch. And then it does the command. Here's the thing. Just keep in mind that before you do the command, you do want the caps to be round. And then thickness, no. Surface, no. Pipe radius 1. And then hit enter. And then that should then develop that into what we're looking at. So with this, we'll go to and change the structure color from green. We'll go here to black, and then we'll go here to a Arctic mode, so you can kind of see the development of that dome. The next thing we'll be doing is from this geometry and from those pipes, we'll be creating a surface in between all of this. This way we can take that pattern and we can play around with it. But the most important thing is to be able to cover a structure like this. And so let's go over that. Let's first go here into shaded mode. Let's hide the structure. So hide that layer. Let's hide. Now we got this. This is good. Now we want to start, like I mentioned earlier, from one portion here and work our way up to create one of the cover sections. So I'll go here to layer 5, and I'll call this cover. It'll change the color so we can see it to something different. We'll just go with turquoise on this one. So we'll hit OK. Now let's work our way up to the top. I like using this technique because it takes away all the errors that you can introduce as a human. So we'll go here to loft, and we'll just be clicking on this one and this one. So these two segments. Now do and try to keep in mind that you want to select the curves and on the similar side, right? So if I select click here and I hit enter, it creates that. But if I do loft between this and then I select this edge here on this side, I'll hit enter, it actually flips it over. So you want to pick the similar side so it organizes the curves accordingly. So let's do that. Let's go to loft. We'll go from this one to this one, enter. Then we'll go from this one to this one, and we'll skip one, and you'll see why. Skip one, loft, select, enter, and as long as if you've done the same command, it's going to remember. So we'll select that one, enter, and then do the same thing here. Now let's hide the line work, and let's just connect these two. So we'll go to loft between this and this, loft between this and this, loft between this and this, and loft between this and this. When we have most of the work done here, it does go a lot quicker because most of the geometry has already been taken care of. It's just connecting the dots. So with this, we've basically created one segment that represents the covering of the entire dome. Now keep in mind that this only applies with domes and geometries that are perfectly symmetrical. Otherwise, you'll have a lot of issues, and you do have to do some of those things by hand or using other tools like Grasshopper, which I do teach. But with that being said, let's take these covers and we'll go right click, select objects. We could either join it, but this is what I like to do. I'm going to turn this into a block. So I'll type in block. I will hide the structure and bring back the line work because I want the center to be the exact location where all those curves intersect. And we'll call this cover 01. Let's say we're going to have more iterations, so 01 would be our first iteration. Now with this, that we've created that block, now let's do polar array. Now we can do polar array, do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or I can take this, do rotate, copy, yes, and just make sure that I have those endpoints on so we can go from here and work our way around. So this is where there could be some mistakes introduced. So that's why I always try to snap to maybe not even lines. It would be even better to use some of these points. Now let's bring back our structure. And that takes care of it. Now let me bring back everything else. I'll type in show or unisolate and show so we can bring everything back. So we have our work kind of taken care of here. This starting with our base geometry, moving on to our subdivisions, then turning it into 3D. And then here, I'll hold down Alt and I'll pull on the X axis on the gumball. Now I'll type in isolate again. Select this, zoom selected. Now we'll take this and hide it again. Let's go here to surface. Hide all of this. And now we can move on to, let's say, creating a pattern on this type of dome. So at this point, what we can do is select this. And the cool thing is that since we have, I'll type in show, since we still have the work taken care of here, I don't mind messing this up. The only thing that I am a little bit careful with is that since this is our block, and if I change this segment, the segments on this one will change. So I almost want to, let's go here and type in, select this, isolate, and then lock this, select everything except for one of the segments and delete everything else. So I had a overlapping one. So now let's go here to block. I actually want to take this and okay, so we'll take, oh, we're missing a strut here. So that's another thing. We can go back to our previous work here. And I see that there's a line segment here that's missing on all of them. So I'll go back and fix that. Now, my apologies. I did go a little bit quick on that part, so I missed that portion, but we'll be careful from here. See, enter. Now we'll explode this, select our structure, type in pipe, and then enter. Now, let's go back to what we were doing, because what we're doing here is we're taking this block instance, we want to explode it again, and you'll see why. Is because we want to keep that block that we just had, and we want to recreate another block. So I'll hide this, bring back the line work, and this is, sorry for a little bit of a confusion on this one. We'll just create another block. So I'll go to block, set the base point. Here, we'll call this cover 02. 01 was our first one. We'll hit OK, and we'll array this, we'll rotate this around. So we'll go to rotate. Sometimes you can copy a bunch and then do this. Just hope I don't have any redundant ones. No. Okay. Now that we've done this, we can now select this, double click. Now we're going to do a pattern in here. Different ways of creating a pattern, but what I want to do for this one is create a frame. So to do this, we'll go to duplicate, face border, which will allow me to copy the border of this. I'll hit enter and then do offset 6 inches to the inside. Then take this and trim the inside, creating kind of like this inner frame on the inside. So we'll do that to all of these at once. So we'll do duplicate face border and we'll select all of these. And now we'll do offset. Here's the thing. We can't offset 2 at once, so we do have to do 1 at a time. Select the curve, hit enter, and it'll do the same command it last did. And then select the curve to the inside. If you select the outside one, it will be a bit easier. Then select the offsets. And we're going to trim the inside. Then you can delete the curves if you don't want them anymore. So one way to do that so when we're inside of a block, the gray stuff means that you can't really select anything. You're only able to select some of this. So I like to use some of the selection filters down here. Deselect surfaces. This way it only select the line work. Now we can just delete that, hit OK, and it will basically do that to the entire rest of the dome. And now, so at this point, now that we've done it to all of those, if that looks good, we can actually join it together and then offset it to give it a little bit of a thickness. The other thing we can do is go inside of the block. And now let's create the glass. This is going to be a frame. This pipe is going to be part of the structure, and this is going to be kind of like the glass portion on the inside. So we'll go to glass. Let's change our color. We'll go here to blue. And let's work our way around. So let's do the same thing that we did to create these triangles. We'll go to loft, and we can do planar surface or planar surface, but it won't let me select those curves. So I'll go back to the way that I like creating it, which is using loft, and we'll use here. It's not letting me select here, this one. So we'll go to the inside of this one, duplicate edge, and it's not letting me duplicate the edges here. So let's actually go back this one. Oh, the reason why I'm not able to select it is because I have surfaces undone. So that's one of the things that can cause issues, is if you have any of these unselected, it does sometimes I get a little bit confused. So we'll go back to that and we'll do loft between these two. Or you can do planar surface, but we need to create it using these. And we'll go to change object layer. So depending on what technique you like to use best, planar surface between these three curves, or loft between this and this. So whichever one you choose, make sure that you're kind of consistent through all of them. So I'll just do loft. And then so now working our way up here. Okay. Now we'll hit OK. And then let's bring back the structure here. Hide the line work. And let's actually hide the structure. I want to do one last thing. We'll select the cover here. We'll select all of these. And we'll type in explode block. So now all of these are their own individual ones that we can select here. So we'll go to cover, select objects, join, and we'll offset surface. It will show you here with the arrows which direction it's going to offset it. I will flip it to the other direction. So I'll go to F, enter to flip. Now let's give it a value. So I'll say 0.5 inches. Make sure that it says sharp, solid is fine. You can have it round and then open, but that won't give you, so just make sure you have solid on, yes. And then we hit enter, it will calculate and do the offset for that. Now what we need to do is select the blue one, glass, select objects, and we'll do offset surface. Both sides, here where it says, yes. And then we'll do 0.125 inches, just to give it a little bit of thickness for the glass. And now we can bring back the structure here, and let's take a look here. So if we change some of the colors here, that's looking good. And let's go now here into rendered mode, or even Arctic, and that's looking good. The only thing so we can see through the glass is we'll go here to glass, material, and we'll change it from a default material here to a glass material. And that's all you need to basically be able to see through inside of Arctic mode. But I will be applying some materials, doing some exhibits, and showing you what this looks like at the end when you do a render. Let's go back to shaded mode, type in show, and let's bring these back and type in unisolate. And that is going to be the way to develop a dome. Here at the end, I will go over one more technique to create subdivisions, but at the end, when we develop it fully, it will end up being the same steps that I took for this one. What I'll be doing is taking this original one, hold down Alt, copy it to the side, then type in isolate, and then here, let's hide the dome and that section. So we can now here develop this in a different way. Let's say create hexagons. This one's a little bit tricky. Is when you want to create, let's say, hexagons or any other shape, you just want to visualize how to create it on the grid first. And then since this is subdivided evenly, it will all kind of come together at the end. So we'll go to a new line 1. And now I'll go here to polyline. I'll go from here. We'll turn on points here, here, and go here. And then C, enter to close. So basically 2 up, 2 down. And you can either do it this way, and all it comes down to is more like patterns, frequencies, and things that you do over and over again. And those sometimes will come out with some really interesting patterns more than anything by just following a specific process. Like keeping it here a little bit quiet. Why? Because I want to show you sometimes concentrating here on how some of these things are developed. You can extract so many different patterns just from a simple grid, and this is just one of the ways of doing it. There are literally so many different techniques to go to create patterns. So at the end of the day, that creating a pattern on a surface then does not become as important as the function and the design of the overall structure, right? Like if we are to create this design here, so let's finish this up and I'll explain in 1 second here. So what happens is the dome, technically, the dome that we created can be subdivided in so many different ways, shapes, and patterns that what happens is that it ends up being more as an aesthetic at the end. What matters the most is what's the function of the dome? What is it going to be used for? Are the spaces inside usable? Is it creating a good atmosphere? And then at the end, the pattern that you choose, yes, it is important. I'm not saying that it's not, but it is not as critical as the functionality. And sometimes by creating something that looks really nice, it may actually not be function as well because you're kind of forcing one into the other. So with that being said, this is another method to create those subdivisions. And I feel actually this is a pretty cool design. If it was a little bit tighter, I think it would actually end up looking really interesting. So I'll type in show. And actually on this one, I want to do one last thing, okay? I will go into why I like using Grasshopper, okay? One thing I want to share is if you want to develop this, we'll just hide that and make sure that we only have one line segment. So we'll go to explode and then cell duplicate. There's nothing that's duplicated, which is good. So I'll delete this original curve and then this one. Let's close this off. When we use Grasshopper, we're able to save some time and see some things that we maybe would not be able to see the same way inside just with Rhino. And it seems intimidating, but it's actually not that intimidating. If we just go to Grasshopper, we'll open it up. What we need to do is first bring those lines into Grasshopper. So I'll go here to Curve. And when we bring in this component, well, these lines we're now going to bring into Grasshopper. So I'll select this, set multiple curves. And now that when I select it, if it turns green, then it's working. Make sure you have this on and display. All of these are on. Now I'll go to multi-pipe, which seems scary because it has all these different inputs, but I'm going to show you only 3 different inputs that you need to use. We'll take these lines, they'll go into the curves, and automatically they work. And the cool thing is that the connections are perfect. Now the one thing that we need to make sure to change is if we want to change the size of it, well, we need to change the input. So I'll go here to 1.50, and that will give me basically a slider, which is a set of numbers that we can move. And we'll use this for our strut size. But it doesn't do the connections. This is where you want to copy this up by tapping Alt or Control-C, Control-V, and just copy that twice more. One into the node size and one into the end offset. And now by decreasing those, we're able to play with the connections a little bit more. So with that last technique, we did get a little bit into the parametric portion of it, but the benefits truly outweigh some of the intimidation factor that Grasshopper has. With this, now we can take this, and you won't be able to select it here. So we'll create a new layer called Structure 2 and use that. Then we'll select this, right click, and then click on Bake. This will then ask you which layer, which Structure 2 is the one that we want, and then it will actually create it. Now we can save this, click on Don't Draw Any Preview Geometry, but remember, when you want to see it again, you need to click on the red one so you can see the Grasshopper work. With that being said, this is what that looks like, and it's a different pattern, different subdivision, using a different method for creating the structure and the connections here. So thank you very much for being here. Hopefully you found that useful, and I appreciate you coming by. Hopefully I'll see you next time.